When you're using object-oriented programming to actually develop programs, you would need to think of the different components in your program as actually objects or living beings which have characteristics and functions rather than just many classes or just all the functions put into one class. So, for example, we could think of this rectangle as a class, but if we're using object-oriented programming to actually make our software, let's say this class is what we want to represent as a dog. So in this case, the characteristics that a dog would normally have is something like age, height, and probably breed. So these three things are what kind of defines the dog. And a function that a dog would do is just something like bark. So let me kind of divide these two sections. And let's say the function would be bark. So when we're coding this, if the user wants to call this function that the dog would do, they could easily do that. And logically, it just makes much more sense to organize classes into these types of things. So you would have many more classes, which you would now refer to as objects, but it would be much more organized, and logically it would make much more sense to actually use, because we have this class called dog, which obviously has characteristics which are instance variables in Java, which is age, height, breed. So age would be int, height would be integer or float or double, breed would be string because you just need to specify, and then bark would be a function that it would perform by using some of these values or printing out something that you want the user to see. Another thing to keep in mind, since I'm talking about this, because we're going to be separating all these functions into specific objects, like this one right here, all of this is going to be run by the main class, which has the public static main void method, which I've talked about in a previous video. And so you would still need to have that, and that would be kind of like your launcher class, which would run all of these functions. So for example, if you were getting user input, then you would get it in the main class, but then you would use the dog class if the user requires it. And I'll be showing you examples in actually clips where you could see Java code. So here you can see I've made another class called dog, and I've also made a tester or launcher class, which would have the public static void main method, which would actually run the program. And this would kind of just act as an object which you could reference from the main method. Now, if I just add these values like age, height, and breed, which would be the characteristics of the dog that I was talking about, and if I add the function, which is the method right here, bark, then this would basically print out woof, but we could obviously change this to whatever we want. But this just kind of shows you that we could use Java to organize the characteristics and the functions that we want the user to use, and just organize it more easily so that the coder could have an easy time using this, and it would be more simple to handle large projects. Now, as I mentioned previously, if you want to actually reference dog, which is the class right here, you would need to use the public static void main method right here. So if you want to use this, then you would need to make an instance variable again, but this time it would be of type dog. And let's say we want to change something like the age of the dog, and we could actually reference the dog variable and use the dot operator, which is just a dot, a period, and reference, what was the name? We could reference the age, and we could assign it to be equal to, let's say, 14. So now this instance, which we've created by making an instance variable of the dog, we've now changed the age of this instance to 14. We could also just call on the function, which is the method we made, and do d.bark. And this would actually run this print statement right here. So let's just run that. And we could see this. And if we want to print age, then we could just do this. So here we would get the print statement that we declared before and also the age that we assigned right here. So this would just be a simple way to make an object and a very basic explanation of what object-oriented programming is. But I'll be showing an example that is more complex than this and also uses object-oriented programming. But this would be the fundamental, and I'll be showing this in a future video. So if that is made, I will leave a link below. Thank you.